Oh, I'm in grave danger of getting told off for making a coffee badly again here. Instant coffee. I put a wet spoon in the sugar, I'm doomed. So it's been...
the year off, right?
Yeah, it's been Christmas and New Year, and obviously we've had a little break from the sort of walk round videos showing progress on the projects because we haven't been working over the Christmas period. We did, as you know, come in a couple of times and shoot a little Q&A session. We thought that'd be a nice way to just answer a few of the questions that have been asked. But we're back on it. We're back full speed ahead, so let's go and see what we've been up to. As we pass through here, you will possibly notice on the left there's some building work going on. And that is, Rich has been entrusted to a bit of a change around in our reception area. So we're building a new room in there, making better use of the space. So we've got our engine build rooms will still be in there, but we'll have a new space which is going to be a sort of just a meeting room to sit down with customers and talk about ideas and that sort of thing, because we haven't, at the moment, we haven't really got a nice quiet place to just sit down and chat. So that's that, right? What's going on in here? Utah, I think we just literally got that in here last time and started bolting a few bits onto it. We're now full steam ahead really with this, so things that we've been on with fuel system. So we showed the fuel tank before, but that's now in. Trev made the straps, stainless steel straps to strap that down. We've done all the vent pipe work for that. We've also done the filler neck. That's all completely done, and also the pipe work which goes from the tank through to where the pump and filter have now been mounted underneath. So actually, apart from running the lines under the car, that's the fuel system done. We've got the radiator in there at the minute. We just had to drill the holes in the side mount flanges on that to get that mounted up properly. It's got to be in there at the minute because we're going to be mocking up the air conditioning lines, which we're going to do in aluminium hardline. So we need to make up a set of mock-up lines while that's in there, and then we'll send those mock-up lines away to have the final aluminium hard lines made. The heater unit, we've been trial fitting that. That's about ready to go in for the final time. I think Adam's just waiting for the controller unit for that, so we can just fire it up on the bench and test it all before we put it in. But we have done the bulkhead. There's like a nice little billet polished aluminium panel in the bulkhead there where the heater and aircon lines run through. That's now fitted. Where the battery cable runs through the bulkhead, there's like a stud we use to pass the battery cable from one side of the bulkhead to the other. That's fitted. Trev's just been running the battery cable through today to the back. Battery's mounted. And then in the background we've been working on all sorts of other tasks. So we've had the seat in just to trial fit that again. Now it's back from blasting and powder coating to check the clearance on where we put the battery cable. What else we've been working on? James has been 3D printing. There's a little blank off for one of the aircon outlets. There are three vent outlets on the aircon unit, and we only need the two for the two dash vents. So James has designed and 3D printed a little cap for one of them. And at the moment he's working on the speaker enclosures for the front footwells. So there's some really nice apertures in the front footwell as standard, which are ideal to put a speaker in, but you can't just bolt the speaker into a flat panel because the back of the speaker would then be open to all the road dirt and water being kicked up by the wheel. So James is just fabricating some aluminium enclosures that it's almost like an aluminium tin that bolts into that footwell and forms a sealed cavity that the speaker is going to sit into. So we're basically tackling loads of little jobs like that. I've just been doing the wire routing planning. So I've done a list of all the electrical components that are going to go into the car. I'm now laying out just some yellow wire because it stands out nicely against the dynamat and the paintwork to show the routing that we'd already planned at the metalwork stage, but to physically show that, so when Max comes next week, Max from Bremax, who is going to build the wiring loom for the car, he can see the exact routing that we've planned and then measure up for his wiring loom. So he'll be coming to do that end of next week, and then hopefully a couple of weeks after that we'll have the wiring loom. And I think that'll tie in nicely with quite a lot of other things completing. We've finished building the axle now. We're just waiting for some powder coated parts to come back, the caliper brackets that we've designed and made to come back so we can finish the brake setup on the axle. And we're waiting for the steering rack mounts and the steering arms to come back from being machined to finish the front axle. And then we're pretty much ready to get it all in then. So that's where we're at with that. Pretty exciting few weeks ahead on that one, I think. Gordon's car, we were looking last time at the fact we were doing some revisions on the rear subframe. A little bit too much road sort of differential noise being transferred into the body. I explained it in the previous Uncut episode, that we were redesigning the rear subframe so that the diff was actually rubber mounted into the subframe, which we did. I did a test drive in it, absolutely spot on, really happy with that. So stripped that out, subframe's powder coated now and ready to go back in. The other thing that we're working on this at the minute is a power steering conversion. When we originally sort of discussed the spec of the car, there was a bit of a to and fro about power steering, and eventually Gordon said, no, I'll go without it. But now, having driven the car for a bit, I think, and I agree, it's fantastic when you're on the move, but when you're manoeuvring it and parking it, it is just a little bit of a workout on the arms. So we're just doing an electric power steering conversion on that, which we'll talk about a bit more next time. So that's that. The Stratos, we just successfully fired that up last time, having solved the cam belt tensioner noise issue. Since the thing we've just been doing on this is there's a billet block that we designed and had machined down here, which holds the drive shaft bearing. This is an MR2 box, so the sort of centre shaft here is an MR2 shaft, so obviously there's no mount on the Alfa Romeo engine for that, so we've done a billet mount. We essentially designed a section up here that bolts onto where the original oil filter takeoff goes on, and then a bearing block that bolts up underneath it, which we've just done. So the actual drive shafts are ready to go on now, which will be the final sort of mechanical piece of the puzzle. Once we've finished the calibration work on the engine, we will now be in a position to drive it around, albeit probably just around the yard to start with. But the brakes are already functional, bled, the clutch is bled, the gear shift works. So following the completion of the engine calibration work, be ready to trundle that around. So that's an exciting prospect in the next few weeks. This, nearly went past it. So the Jensen CV-8. There was a bit of a pause on updates on that because we decided to get Ron Clay to essentially build us a new chassis for it. And then we've been waiting for various parts to arrive, which is all falling into place really well. We're going to be collecting the chassis on Monday. It's now Thursday. And I think 3 or 4 days ago, the engine and transmission and various other parts arrived from the States. This is Chevy LSA. So previously we were umming and ahhing. We knew it was going to be a GM V8, much to everybody's annoyance, who was insistent we should be going Mopar, but we're not going Mopar. And we were umming and ahhing over whether to go for an LS or an LT series. And in the end, the decision was made when we had a look at some of the accessory drive kits. Now, that's the belt train and the parts that it drives. So the power steering pump, aircon compressor, alternator. And those accessory drive kits, there are various original ones from the various cars that GM originally installed these engines in, and there are some aftermarket ones as well. But with the LT series engine, no matter what accessory drive kit you get, there's always some component right in this space here, which on the Jensen is exactly where the steering column is going to need to be. And although we would be able to engineer our own accessory drive kit to mount things differently, we're into a load of engineering and cost then. So that kind of swung the decision, because we were unsure anyway. We weren't strongly biased one way or the other, so it swung the decision because there is an accessory drive kit you can get for the LSA, which has nothing in this area here, which means the steering column run, which comes down to here, the rack sits about here in the car, will be uninterrupted. So we got the engine and transmission, got all that put together. The accessory drive kit will be here on Monday, which is from a company called American Billet, if I remember rightly. And we'll get that all on next week. And that then will mean everything falling into place. So we'll have the engine package with all the accessory drive on it. We'll have the chassis back here. We've already stripped the body, as you've seen previously. So we'll be in that exciting bit where we can start dangling engines into chassis and starting to work out how much metalwork needs chopping around, which is a good phase. So I'm excited about that. Let's go this way. I've got a treat for you here as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hopefully not just the slurping of my coffee. But, listen. Wow. 20 episodes we did with that door creaking every time. And finally put a bit of oil on it, which took about 2 seconds. Thank you, Gaz. So, the Morris. And this is one everybody's been asking about, of course, because we stopped for a while on it for a couple of reasons, really. We were at the point where we needed to do the front wings, and that was a job I really wanted Stu on, and Stu was finishing up all the loose ends on the Camaro metalwork. So we basically just paused on it while we were finishing off the Camaro, but Camaro metalwork's now done. So we're back on this. I think Stu managed to squeeze a couple of days in before Christmas, I think. And now we'll be on it solidly, so you should see some pretty good progress on this. Whoa, I'm knocking things over. So previously you saw that we'd modelled a revised wing shape and front end shape in foam, and it's literally just clagging insulation board on there and expanding foam to build up the areas where we knew we wanted to build it up wider, and then I spent a while literally just manually sanding that foam back until we'd got to a shape that we were happy with. We'd previously done a mock-up steel wing on the other side to allow us to check for how wide the wing needed to be to get wheel clearance, because obviously with the foam in there you can't actually get the wheel up in the arch. So once we were happy with all of that, over to Stu to work his magic, and he's been doing exactly that. So this wing section is pretty much done. That one, I think he's made the 2 sections. He might not have welded the 2 together. It's made in 2 halves, which are joined down here. A lot of English wheel work and a lot of shrinking work. You might have also seen in the tool tour that Nat did just before Christmas. He was excitedly enthusing about the shrinker that he'd built with the pneumatic cylinder on it. And one of the reasons we wanted to get that is because we knew when we were doing these wings there was going to be an enormous amount of shrinking to do. And it was going to be pretty tedious and difficult with the small shrinker that we used to have. So yeah, a lot of work on the shrinker, a lot of work on the English wheel. But actually it came together pretty well. Stu's now working on the front end. It's going to be a centre section that's actually separate to the wings. There'll be a flange on this tube here, and that central section will bolt through to that flange, and there'll also be an inward flange on the front of this wing section here, so you end up bolting all 3 flanges together. Stu's just been making this last section of the wing here, so effectively that whole wing will be in 3 new sections plus the original section, but all of those sections eventually will be cut flush and butt welded together, so it effectively looks like one piece metal panel. So really happy with how that's going, actually. Subtle change on the bonnet that we're doing as well, I nearly forgot to mention. We wanted to just bring the front edge of the bonnet down slightly more at the sides to give it a slightly more of an upward curve. And then we were scratching our heads yesterday still about where we were going to put the swage. We wanted something to define this area around the intake a bit. Not necessarily all the way around, but something. And then we were looking at how we would transition that swage into the bonnet, which is just a smooth curve originally. But then we realised that this swage line that runs down the centre here comes around and actually fades out around here. So we came up with the idea of carrying that swage along, dropping it along with the revised curve on the front of here, and then carrying it onto that wing section, and then tapering it out on the corner there, which I think will work very well. It's certainly looking good so far. So excited to see all that lot come together. It is looking amazing. It's a very difficult car to get right cosmetically, because there's such an iconic look originally, and to widen it pretty substantially without making it look like you've tacked kind of cobbled up trailer arches onto it can be quite a challenge. So I'm aware that it's a tall order to make this look good. I'm hoping we're managing that. Right, let's move on. Chevette. Scott's working away on this now. It's a good one. I'm doing a lot of tripping over things today. Somebody's put something in my coffee. So last time we were doing the transmission tunnel. I've actually had to just watch the last video because we've had 3 weeks, I think, since then. I'd forgotten where we were at. We were doing the transmission tunnel, we'd done the seat mounts, and we were just doing the pedal box mounts. Moving on from that theme of doing sort of mounts relating to the driving position and controls, we're using a Corsa electric power steering column on this, which is quite a common conversion for putting power steering into other cars. The mounts for that have to be pretty secure because all of the torque reaction of that motor, all of the additional torque from the power assistance is actually fed into the shell or whatever it's mounted to, so the mounts need to be really sturdy. So we've got the upper set of mounts directly into the cage tube. It's literally threaded bosses welded up into the cage tube. And then we've done a threaded box section, if you like, which sits up here on the bulkhead. It's got a pretty substantial weld area around it, and we've made that out of reasonably heavy gauge steel as well. And that's what the front mounts for that are bolt up to. So that's done now, and it's just nice to get to that point where you're sitting in the seat, you've got your feet on the pedals, you've got the steering wheel in your hand, and you can completely tailor that driving position. One big benefit with this one is that I'm almost exactly the same size as the customer, so I can sit in this and be reasonably happy that if it's good for me, it's probably going to be good for him as well. Especially, you know, with the amount of adjustment we've built into everything as well, you're pretty much guaranteed they're going to be happy with it. We've done the tunnel section around the gear shifter. This was an auto, so it had a sort of squared off raised section on the transmission tunnel there, and we've sort of played on that shape and extended a new piece back to mimic that shape, but with a rounded rear face on it. And then there'll be a flat panel that bolts down to that new flange we've made with a cylindrical extension up around the shifter that the gear gaiter will go onto. Handbrake mounts we've done as well. You've got hydraulic handbrake, carbon fibre lever there with a nice Alcon master cylinder. That one there, we plasmaed a metal plate that was exactly the same profile as the handbrake base, welded threaded bosses to it, and then welded the whole lot down to the tunnel. So it just bolts straight through. There's no nuts and bolts to fiddle around with. So that's going well. Yesterday we made the big transformation back here. We've had those horrible remnants of rusty arch on this for ages. And we finally cut that out. So yesterday Scott did the cutout of the arch, and pretty much 90% of the tubbing of the rear arches on this. For the actual marking out, we use quite a cool tool which we bolt down to the jig here, and you can run a part of the tool around the inner arch here, and then it has a piece that comes around the outside of the car and points either a pen or a laser at the outer quarter panel, and so you can replicate the shape of the inner arch tub onto the outer quarter, which then gives you a line to cut round, which results in a completely flat plane between the bit you've cut out and the original inner arch tub. So where we do our new fillet of steel round to tub that arch out and give us the clearance for the wide wheels, it means it's completely flat straight through. Once you've got the outer quarter cut out, it's a case of making the flange for the tubbed section. A lot of people do this a bit crudely by just putting a piece of sheet straight down and then welding around it, but it does give you a lot of distortion on the quarter panel, and it's not a particularly strong way of doing it either. So what we do is, before we cut it out, we make a little 90-degree flange and form it to the complete shape of the quarter. So it's the complete shape of the arch and profile to sit perfectly onto the quarter. Then we cut the quarter panel out. That way, even if the shape's lost when you cut it out, the piece you've made is already the right profile. That profile piece then sits into the inside of the quarter panel. We plug weld it all the way around, or spot weld it around if there's clearance for a spot welder. So that gives you a 90-degree flange running all the way around that newly cut out arch, which is completely parallel with the original inner arch, and then it's just, in inverted commas, a case of making a flat fillet that sits around and you just plug weld that through. So it's just a really nice, neat way of doing arch tubbing. We've obviously just thrown the wide arch on, because when you get to this point, it's hard to resist trying to see how the body kit's going to look on it. Scott's just working on the other arch at the minute. Probably have that done by the end of this week, and then I think we're going to take it off the jig at that point, because the Jensen, we should have our new chassis here on Monday, which will go straight onto the jig, ready for us to start offering the engine and gearbox up, and also start looking at how much work's going to be involved with putting the Jag independent back end in. Have a little wander this way. I think last time will be much the same as this time on the Mustang, pretty much in the sanding and fettling stage. I think Gaz has moved on a little bit further with that, but pretty much the week before Christmas we stopped on this to start doing some tidying up work in the body shop anyway. And we were also waiting for a few parts. So there's a headlamp surround panel which had been damaged. I think I mentioned it previously. So we've now got those. They arrived, I think, the day before we finished. So Gaz has got those now, so he can do the complete front end mock-up on it. And it's just that process of carrying on, sanding and trial fitting, and we'll push forward with that and see how it goes. So I think that's probably it for this week. Lots of progress on the Morris, lots on the Chevette. Looking forward to next week, because I think we'll have the Jensen chassis here, and we'll probably have started offering up that engine and box into it. So that project's definitely at the super exciting stage at the minute. So yeah, we'll see you all again next week. All the best.